How do you recognize evil when you see it? And what I've concluded is that the most reliable way to detect evil is based on the Bible verse where it says, "Woe to those who call good evil and evil good." Because what is being described there is what Owen would call wizardry and what I call inversion. Inversion is literally insisting that things are the opposite of what they truly are. It's beyond simple lying. It's beyond simple falsehood. It's about an attempt to impose a false narrative and a false reality on others. And I think that's why the act of inversion is called out directly in that way, because we see so much of it, and we see so much of it being imposed, and this is where we see the lie stacked upon the lie stacked upon the lie. Today I was posting on the recent Florida anti-BDS law. And it's insanely obnoxious. It's insanely and objectively anti-American. It would be hard to be more anti-American than this particular law. A similar law has already been found in Texas to be unconstitutional. It's obviously unconstitutional. And yet the Florida governor and the Florida cabinet members actually flew to Jerusalem, something that is actually illegal under Florida law, and signed this new Florida law, this new imposition upon U.S. citizens in the state of Florida that forbids them from exercising their First Amendment rights. I mean, and when you look at the number of lies that are required just in the text of the law, even within the text of the law, the examples that they give are contradictory. Now, I'm not focused on this particular Florida law or even the series of laws. I'm just pointing out that we can recognize this as evil because it's more than just a simple falsehood. It's a series of falsehoods stacked one upon the other, and then the entire false edifice is declared to be good. This is practically textbook inversion. And so, that's how we can recognize that the particular law, as well as a number of the various statements involved, are evil, because it is an inversion of reality, an inversion of the truth, and an inversion of unalienable rights granted to Americans by their creator and guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. The rights do not come from the Constitution. The rights are simply acknowledged and guaranteed to be protected by the Constitution. And so when you see this behavior, these redefinitions, these discovered emanations and penumbras that do not exist, when you see symbols being modified, the rainbow, Owen's talked about this too. The rainbow is God's promise not to destroy the world by water. It has nothing to do with anybody's pride. It has nothing to do with who is attracted to whom. And in the same way, when you see these symbols being adopted and stolen and folded and spindled and mutilated, that's the process of inversion. That is an evil process. When Hitler took the swastika, the swastika was not a German symbol. It was a Hindu symbol. Now, you may have different opinions about Hinduism, obviously, but I think that we can agree that the context in which it placed was another indication of inversion. And we see history being inverted all the time. When Ben Shapiro writes that America is the result of Judeo-Christian culture, that's inversion. That's historical falsehood. That's evil. It's an attempt to deny a people their history. Same thing as with the whole year zero obsession with the left. Whether you deal with the French revolutionaries, the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, the left is always about trying to revise history, eliminate history, and start from scratch with their beliefs as the axioms upon which society is founded. Never works, of course, because those axioms provide for a foundation that is arguably worse than sand. But we're seeing this more and more today. Now, suddenly, they can't recognize the difference between men and women, boys and girls. They're claiming that different groups of people are equal, even though they not only are observably different in their capabilities, but they are fundamentally different right down to their DNA. It's always interesting when they say things, when you see those old terms like, color is only skin deep. That's true, but DNA goes right down to the very marrow of your bones. And so it's not the color that matters, it's the DNA. And so, does that mean that everything is completely determinative and we are simply robots who wander around thinking that we have free will? No, of course not. If you follow the logic of all the scientists and pseudo-philosophers who try to make that claim, their logic is invariably flawed. Invariably flawed. And, this shouldn't be a surprise. It's for the obvious reason that scientists are terrible philosophers. As a general rule, they have no training in logic. They have no reading in philosophy, either the classics or the medievals. And they tend to know nothing about any religion at all. And so, it's always been interesting, back in the 2008 to 2010 timeframe, when I was, it was after I'd written The Irrational Atheist. I engaged in a number of debates with different atheists and that sort of thing. And I think it was a little bit shocking to some of them when I would first prove to them and everyone else, and then specifically point out that their knowledge of Christianity didn't even rise to the level of the Chronicles of Narnia. Now, how do you expect an intelligent opinion about a subject when that individual's level of knowledge, forget Wikipedia, it doesn't even rise to the level of a children's book? And so this is also something that is an indicator, is that when you see ignorance of the subject that is being addressed, when you see people relying upon the mainstream media's version of a historical event, a scientific quote-unquote fact, anything really, you have a pretty good idea that they simply don't know what they're talking about. So they're not really engaging in genuine dialectic. They're simply resorting to rhetoric in an attempt to emotionally persuade you and to manipulate you into the position that they want you to accept, the perspective that they want you to accept. And we're so surrounded by this. That's what I mean when I say that we're living in the upside down. If you've seen Stranger Things, you know what I'm talking about. The world that we live in is the upside down. It's just that many of us don't realize it. And, that's why so many of you, I think, are so hungry for the truth, are so desperate for the truth, because you know on some level that you don't belong here. You know on some level that there is truth and reality and beauty and hope